Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We sure appreciate you being here. I hope you and your family are safe and well and staying warm. I'm so excited that Elizabeth Hutt Pollard is on our show today. And I want to thank Susan Leonard in particular for introducing us. We'll be in webinar format so that we can tape the program. So please introduce yourselves on chat. I want to remind everyone that we'll provide an opportunity for you to get to know each other a little better during our networking sessions that are the fourth Friday of each month, so on February 26th. From now on, the cost of attending those sessions is that you need to bring a friend. The bigger this gets, the more benefit there is for you. So let me start quickly and talk about Purse Power, and then I'll introduce Elizabeth. Purse Power is working to help women use their massive purchasing power to drive positive change. We believe that if women who make 80% of all purchasing decisions would choose to buy from the companies that actively promote women, and we would do that in mass, and create a funding stream for battered women's shelters in the process, that we could shatter glass ceilings and change lives. So that's what we're trying to do with Purse Power. We began these calls when Corona started as a way to try to support our community, bring leading speakers, including Elizabeth here today, in to talk about their insights and knowledge and share what we need to know to successfully navigate these difficult times. I want to shout out to a couple special guests that are here today. So Lou Kerr, Jennifer Grigsby, thank you for being on the program. All right, so I'm going to tell you about Elizabeth. Please share your comments via chat, and I would appreciate if you go ahead and introduce yourselves. And then when we get to questions, you can click on the Q&A link and put your questions in, and we'll get those answered for you. So welcome, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Donna. I'm so excited.
This is going to be a fun program. All right. So Elizabeth is the executive chair of Applied Silver, which is a privately held company that addresses infection prevention and antibiotic stewardship in the health, athletic, and consumer markets. She has extensive experience bringing to market highly specialized technology and solutions for healthcare and life sciences. She also is the Secretary of Science and Innovation for the state of Oklahoma and serves as a strategic advisor and on the board of directors for many early stage life sciences companies. You are really spectacular in terms of your background, and I'm very excited about the insights you're going to provide. She's also been recently named to the Global Board of YPO, which is the premier leadership organization of over 28,000 chief executives around the world. So Elizabeth, again, welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's get started with the questions here. So we want to get to know you. Please give us a little bit of your backstory and how you arrived at this place in your life and career.
Sure. Well, I grew up in rural Michigan, not unlike parts of Oklahoma. And I was the youngest of 4 girls. However, I was that afterthought child. So I act much like a youngest and an oldest in combination. So that can be a very interesting personality, as you can imagine. A good example of this is in kindergarten, I came home from school and I said to my mom, "Mom, I need a YMCA membership." And she said, "Elizabeth, what do you know about the YMCA?" And I said, "Well, I know I need to be fit, and so I need to go." And so that started me on my health and wellness journey, to be quite frank. And I also had been very precocious in other ways, and I joined every club imaginable. And one of the things that I did throughout my whole early years was Girl Scouts, and got exposed to commercial applications of selling cookies. And so that was always a challenge for me, as I always wanted to be the best salesperson. This all relates to the story I'm going to tell as we continue this conversation. But I really fell in love with science throughout my early years. My dad was a major outdoorsman. Living in Michigan, I spent a lot of time ice fishing and mushroom hunting and doing all those things that really help spawn that interest in biology. And my freshman year of high school, I had a fantastic biology teacher who I actually took 3 years of different classes with this person because he was so prolific. An unusual educator who had been trained at University of Michigan with advanced degrees in biology, but teaching at the high school level. And so he really helped me fall in love with science. I ended up going to Michigan State University because we lived 45 minutes from University of Michigan, and I definitely wanted to live away from home. And there I thought I was going to be pre-med. And so I looked at the life science fields and I chose chemistry, and was one of very few women in the program, which we can talk about too as we progress this. But there I realized I had two options, or at least I thought I had two options. And those were a career in medicine or getting a PhD and pursuing an academic career. But neither one really felt right. I found myself at University of Michigan as a research associate doing some diagnostics type research with the Department of Pathology, and realized during that time that pursuing a PhD to study a more narrow field of science for the rest of my career really wasn't right for me, and that a career as a physician wasn't right either. I wanted to do more than treat symptoms. And while I was there, this is when Francis Collins happened to be at the University of Michigan. Francis Collins is head of the NIH. He is the person who led the Human Genome Project. And while he was there, I had a chance to interact with other people in his laboratory and learned that one of the reasons he was so prolific and still is so prolific is because he understood the need to create tools so we could actually study RNA, DNA, sequence DNA, and understand how it all fit together to really be able to treat people in a more personalized way. And I said, that's what I want to do. And so I joined this early stage company called Life Technologies, and I joined in a commercial role, and over the next decade spent time moving through that company in sales, marketing, product development, both in the US and internationally. And that's really important to my story of Oklahoma. So hold that thought. I ended up moving up in different life science companies as the human genome became a reality, and found myself as CEO of a young startup company in Silicon Valley about 17 years ago. And that company was focused on RNA technology, specifically RNA test development. This is what COVID is, an RNA test. So I want to link this together. That company exited several years ago. And at the same time, I had been on the board of Applied Silver, where I'm executive chair and now lead that company in the operating role. And that's focused on infection prevention, actually making textiles residually antimicrobial so that as you're laying in your hospital bed or you're wearing your clothing, they're actually killing microbes actively until they go back into the laundry again and get retreated.
How about that?
So all of these interconnected points. During all of this, my mom unfortunately passed away due to lung cancer 4 years ago. And as we were settling her estate, my mom had been given mineral rights to an oil well here in Oklahoma when she graduated high school from her parents. And I had no idea what to do with this thing. And so the attorney said, well, you should quit claim deed it to you and your husband and solve it later. This doesn't have to be dealt with right now. So that's what we did. And you can imagine after a loss of a mom, it's a hard time. And I was exiting a company at the same time. And so my husband says, let's go to Oklahoma. We've never been to Oklahoma. Let's go see what this Oklahoma is about and look at this oil well where we have these mineral rights. So we did that. And guess what? We fell in love with the people and the place and ended up buying a home here while we were still living in San Francisco and had a place there. Fast forward a year and a half, we ended up getting an unsolicited offer on our place in San Francisco. And it was one of those opportunities that you didn't want to turn down. And my husband said, Elizabeth, you can commute back and forth to Silicon Valley from Oklahoma. There's a direct flight to San Francisco every day. And we can just move to Oklahoma. We have a home and we're ready to go. And so that's actually what we did. And so we've now been here for 2.5 years as residents. We've owned our home for a little over 3 and live in Edmond. And that gets me to the point of because of YPO, I know many people in the the Stitt administration. Governor Stitt is also in YPO. And so when I moved into the area, of course, I got the call to say, Elizabeth, what are you doing here? What's happening? What's going on in your world? And through multiple conversations, I ended up meeting Dr. Casey Strum, who's the president of OSU Health Sciences, and at the time was Secretary of Science and Innovation. And Dr. Strum asked me to come alongside as her deputy because she was very interested in how we could better engage early stage technology and partner within the state. And of course, I'm all about connecting people, and said, absolutely, I'd love to do that. I'd love to work with you. Little did we know that COVID was about to hit when that happened. And in March, Dr. Strum called and said, Elizabeth, believe it or not, we don't have RNA testing capability the way we need to. And we don't have a lot of resources because we're so low in the priority for the government allocations. What should we do? And of course, because of my background in RNA technology and testing, and the fact that I had been at Life Technologies for a decade, that first decade of my career when I left University of Michigan, Life Technologies today is Thermo Fisher. Thermo Fisher is the largest company in the world for life science reagents and testing capability. $100 billion company now versus the little company I joined in the beginning, which tells you how the story grows from being an entrepreneur to being a large public entity. But through multiple relationships, I was able to engage the state with Thermo Fisher so that we could stand up testing and go from the bottom 5 in the United States to 25th.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. When Dr. Strum then needed to get back to OSU to help the university reopen after it had been closed, Governor Stitt asked me to step in into her role as Secretary of Science and Innovation, and that's where I am today.
Wow, how fortunate are we as a state to have you here? That's amazing, especially during this time. It's incredible.
Yeah, and I'm very excited, and I wish it was under different circumstances, but at the same time, it feels like the efforts of all these years has come to fruition and that I can really get back and serve, and that's really my goal.
Right, and make a difference. That's fantastic. That is fantastic. All right, so it is really rough out there. I'd like for you to talk a little bit about the challenges you faced along the way as a business owner and business leader, and then how you overcame them. What are some of the most valuable lessons you've learned from difficult times?
Sure. So I'm going to touch a little bit on this from both large company as well as startup companies so that maybe it addresses it more broadly for our audience. The first thing I want to say is technology doesn't sell itself. You have to be able to connect a technology or a product to a customer need. And I think a lot of times innovators overlook that aspect because they may have a really great idea, but if they haven't positioned it so that it serves a market need or a customer need, it doesn't sell. And so that's one of the hardest things to overcome. Working in an organization where product development was fast and furious in my early days, and then doing a startup, and now on my second startup, you realize that it's really important to make sure that what you have actually addresses, the needs of that individual. Mm-hmm. The second piece is raising capital is really an art. It's not as much a science as it is art. It's all about being able to storytell, number one, and storytell while your technology is really transformative or your product is very transformative. And to do it well, you must have a network that you can leverage. It's about asking for those warm introductions, whether it's to a venture capital firm, a private equity firm, or family office, or an individual angel investor. Having a warm introduction by someone that person trusts, doing the introduction, it creates a real opportunity for a much deeper conversation. So I think having that network is critical. A couple other points I want to make, though, in the path of developing a company is the importance of having a team that's aligned with mission and values. Picking the right team, people who are right for that stage of the company, whether it's early or later stage, is important. Not everyone who's right for a company in the early days is right to take the company to broad scale commercialization. And that's not necessarily because there's anything wrong with that person. It's just about fit. And you have to get comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last key point I want to make is it's very important to stick with your strategy. Don't find yourself getting pulled into the weeds. Stay looking at the bigger picture. And when you're in situations of transition, like I was in choosing what I was going to do with my career when I was at University of Michigan, or when we're in the midst of COVID, it's not the time to get very conservative. It's actually the time to lean in and take risk and double down. So that's an important point that I think everyone should hear.
Agreed. Okay, amazing. All right, so you've spent years leading companies that are focused on, I hope I say this all right, genomic technologies for molecular medicine research, diagnostic, pharmaceuticals, and infection prevention and antibiotic stewardship technologies. As the Secretary of Science and Innovation for Oklahoma, you've been positioned tasked with positioning our state as a leader in the nation's response to the pandemic, as well as future public health crises. What difference are you working to make in our country and in the world? That was awkward, but what kind of difference are you making with this pandemic center? What are you trying to do?
Yeah, so as a result of us finding ourselves in March with very limited options around testing and needing to get the state fully aligned, our public health lab didn't have the capability to lead that effort on their own. They just didn't have the equipment or the resources, frankly. And that really was just an aspect of not having planned for something like this occurring in the future. And so we worked together with our universities, OU, OSU, as well as some of our private companies, such as IMI, to stand up an umbrella of testing across the state. And it said to us, gosh, if we didn't have this network and we weren't able to pull it together this way, we would be really in a world of hell, of hurt. And so what could we do differently? Because there will be a next time. And the fact that we hadn't fully been investing in our public health laboratory, and in fact, the Department of Health, all the other functions, has recently moved to a new building in Oklahoma City, but the public health lab hadn't been planned for. Our legislators had been very forward thinking in creating a bond and beginning to put that into motion, but it hadn't been put into motion. We also, during that time of the outbreak, had other issues coming up that the average person might not have been aware of because it didn't all hit the news. And that was around our animal and food industry getting hit with our workers having COVID and ensuring that that didn't impact our food supply, because once an outbreak happens in a slaughterhouse, it does impact your food supply. And so as we began to look at all those things, we really said, we need to be at the forefront of public health, not trying to catch up. And we need to be looking at a One Health focus. One Health meaning the intersection of human, animal, and environmental health response. And so that was where the idea of the Oklahoma Pandemic Center for Innovation and Excellence was formed. Over the last 90 days, we have acquired a facility outside of Stillwater. We've stood up a management team, and we've put in place state-of-the-art equipment to address all aspects of public health, to allow for research and development around pandemic awareness across One Health, are in the process of building out a state-of-the-art biorepository so that we can store and share biospecimens. This is really important because, for instance, in standing up a COVID test, you have to validate it with real human specimens. How do you get those in advance of needing them? Just there wasn't enough out there in the world in the early days of COVID. And so how could we create this center that could also be an education center where we begin to educate not only ourselves, but future public health leaders, as well as continuing education for public health leaders outside of Oklahoma and around the globe? And so we had a ribbon cutting a few weeks ago, opening the center. Most of the equipment is now validated and tests are beginning to get moved to this new facility with the hopes of being fully operational over the next several months. The goal here is to make sure we have overlap with our existing public health capabilities, but move to the new facility where we have state-of-the-art workflows as well as equipment so that we can broaden our capability, and including now looking at sequencing capabilities across all of these areas of pandemic health, and creating shared services whereby partners and anyone within the state can come and use that equipment, and that we can partner outside of the state with companies like Thermo Fisher and others like Google, who have also helped us stand up this facility with state-of-the-art bioanalytical capability.
Wow, that is fantastic. And it's right here in Oklahoma. It's amazing. I was telling you, my daughter's an epidemiology major. I've got to have her check this out.
Well, you're welcome. And I'd love for anyone who is on the call today to set up a time with us to come and tour. We'd love to show them the facility.
Okay, very good. Very good. All right, thank you. So you act as a strategic advisor to several companies that are focused on technology and solutions for healthcare and life sciences. What kinds of opportunities do you see for female entrepreneurs in particular in those spaces?
Sure. So, focusing first on the life science and biotech space, I'll just say, I think there's loads of opportunities in diagnostic test development. We're seeing those come out and emerging. It's a huge field, and there's a lot of opportunity. I think that ties very closely to women's health and wellness. And I think there's aspects that relate to diagnostics themselves, but also to therapeutics, but also to nutraceuticals and real opportunities there. I mentioned at the Pandemic Center that we're really focused on data analytics. This is a huge explosive area where biocomputational expertise and software systems are really required to drive us forward. And it's a really fast growing segment of life science. Getting more into the healthcare space, I think there's more opportunity around managed healthcare, long-term care facilities, as we have a growing aging population. And then animal health and wellness. That gets overlooked so much, but the pet industry is one of the fastest industries growing in the world. And so my point here is, as you're thinking about what you want to do in your area of science, look at those macro trends. You need to be thinking about, how does my interest area fit with what's happening in the world, and apply it. I do want to also put a plug in here, though, for aerospace and autonomous systems, as well as oil and gas diversification. These are two key technology areas that, as a country, let alone the state of Oklahoma, we really need to be focused on. And so anything that someone is interested in developing in those areas is definitely going to get great funding opportunities and a lot of attention on the international stage.
Okay. Do you have any recommendations on resources that can be used to investigate these macro trends that you're talking about?
Absolutely. I would encourage anyone to look at any of the large investment banks for reports that come out in this regard. They're constantly out there. These would be places like JP Morgan or Barclays. They all put out great studies in this area. But also, right here in the state of Oklahoma, we have the Oklahoma Center for the Advancement of Science and Technology, OCAST. They exist, and this is underneath my cabinet, they exist to help entrepreneurs navigate through these kind of issues from start to finish. And so I'd encourage anyone to reach out to OCAST for help and support. Okay.
Can people outside of the state reach out as well, or no?
It's really meant to be in-state. However, I know, as we are all Oklahomans, we want to help other people. And I'm sure that all of us can help redirect to other places.
Other locations. Okay, so other resources in other places. Okay, very good, very good. All right, so you're on several boards. You're including the YPO board. You've been recognized for diversity. You're bringing more women into YPO. If we have women on the call that want to get on board someday, would you please talk about how they need to prepare themselves and what boards are looking for?
Yeah, certainly. It's really important. So, if you've been tracking with my journey, well, I ended up in science. I also did a master's in administration, and I took the opportunity throughout my career to move through different functional areas of companies, whether that was sales, marketing, business development, product development, and got a great amount of knowledge in the regulatory field and finance. And so this leads me to the first recommendation I would make. Do everything you possibly can. Check the boxes, be curious, try different things. It will help you with a board seat. But the two areas that boards are mostly looking for and having a difficult time filling those board seats are around the area of finance and commercialization. And so if you're really interested in getting on a high profile board or even an early stage company board, those typically are the two areas where they're looking for people. So, do everything you can to learn, how to forecast, read a balance sheet, any of those things. And on the commercial side, expose yourself to sales and marketing. It's critical, public relations. But the most important thing about getting a board seat is having the network. And we talked about that in regard to other aspects of the things I've shared. But you really do need to have a network of C-suite executives that you talk to on a regular basis. I think most board seats come as a result of connections that you already have and letting them know that you're interested in having a board seat. Well, there are recruiting firms, national and international recruiting firms that do recruit for board seats. I find that the easiest way to get a board seat is through those connections, but also because it's coming through a connection, you typically know that you're already aligned with the mission and values of that organization.
I agree totally. We've been doing 2020 Women on Boards now for several years, bringing them to the state. And that network is critical. And one of the things that 2020 Women on Boards does is try to help connect women with each other. But do you have any other suggestions about how to build that network? If you don't have it today, how do you go about building it?
Yes. Try to attend as many events as you possibly can around your area of interest. So next week, the Oklahoma City Chamber is having an innovation event. That would be one opportunity for you to begin to network. I'm going to be there. There'll be other thought leaders there, as well as people that are just interested in seeing how we're progressing innovation in Oklahoma City and the state. And so that would be a great example of how to engage. There are other women's organizations. Certainly, you are a member of several, and there's YPO that you can become a part of later in your career. But getting out there and networking, Donna, I believe that you and I met at a women's event that was sponsored by one of the universities several years ago before I even moved to Oklahoma. And so those are the kind of things that everyone should engage in. And while you're there, don't sit with your friends. Don't be shy. Get up and walk around and talk to anyone that looks interesting or that you think could be interested in you. This is where men do an amazing job of networking. They have no problem taking a cocktail and walking around the room and having a conversation. We women tend to stick a little bit more to people we're comfortable with in those kind of settings, but get out there and just share what you have, and you'll be attracted to the right people and they to you.
Very good. Great advice. The other thing I would also recommend is that people take leadership roles in putting on events, because that also gives you another way to connect with the people you want to talk with.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so let's see here. So who were the biggest mentors you've had in your career, and how did you find them? The other thing is, if people ask you to be their mentor, how do they best take advantage of that kind of offer?
Sure. The best mentors I have had, I've already shared, I've had some great teachers who have just come alongside and helped me grow as a person. I am a woman of faith, and so I've had a lot of pastoral care over the years that have also advised me in keeping my compass focused in the right direction. I have had some great managers as I was developing my early career. I spent about 15 years either building my career from the bottom up and moving through the ranks to being on an executive team, working with peers at the vice president level. And all of those people were people I could take advantage of and remain curious, ask for their help, but also ask why they are so successful and learn from them and not be shy. It's an opportunity to learn and not be competitive. And it's hard to do when we're drivers. But if we can remain curious and ask for help, it's amazing. Today, I actually have an executive coach that I work with on a regular basis. So you're never too late in your career to do that. She keeps me focused and helps me get things out of my head so I can focus on the white space that's necessary to think about strategic things that are important. But I also have a board of directors that I still use as advisors. And I have my YPO forum. So YPO has groups of forums that meet usually 7 to 8 executives. And we go on a journey together in a trusted group that allows us to ask questions that we might be afraid to ask elsewhere and share really just difficulties that we're working through and gain best practices for how to grow. So learning and growing should be a lifetime exploration and not something that ever ends.
You just brought up a really good point. And I've got a board of advisors that we've created. And these are people that have connections that can help us take down barriers, but they also are advisors. And when we're talking about opportunities for women to get on boards and things like that, did you create kind of a board of advisors, even if it was unofficial, when you were growing your business? Go ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I had both a board of directors, and I've always had an advisory board as well. Two different things that need to happen between those. The advisory board is more to kick ideas, understand what's happening in the market, be able to ask for more personal advice about challenges, whereas a board of directors is really there more for governance. That's not to say they can't be used as those closer advisors too, but I think that most people who have been on boards would say that you don't build that relationship with every board director you have, but it's much easier to do with a group of strategic advisors.
And is there something about selecting those people? So who do you go after for that? How do you assess yourself and what you need, and how do you find the people that complement you?
Absolutely. Yeah. First and foremost, I look for someone who's aligned with me culturally and understands the vision and values of the company. Because without that, it's going to fail. Every time. It's going to fail every time. You got to find that person who you have that synergy with, but it shouldn't be someone like you. You're looking for someone who's different from you and can reflect yourself back at you. And so that's really important. But the other way I look for advisors is just my analytical self comes out and I create a matrix of what capabilities do I presently have around me and what's missing. And I go out and I look for that missing attribute that I know will bring greater richness to what we're trying to achieve.
That's excellent. That's excellent. I'm taking this in for me too. Okay. All right. So what I want to do is give people a chance to ask you some questions. So guys, please go to the Q&A box. It looks like we may already have one question up. Okay, is the new program facility in Stillwater on the stock exchange?
No, it is underneath our Department of Health. So, it also addresses our Department of Ag and other areas, commerce as well. It's sitting underneath the Oklahoma State Department of Health. And it is, meant to be a unique attribute underneath that agency that can actually partner with for-profit and nonprofit entities.
Oh, very good. Very good. All right, you guys, I want you to go ahead and ask your questions. So please use the Q&A box at the bottom to ask your questions. And in the meantime, I do want to find out from you how people can best use a mentor. So I know that sometimes you don't want to waste your mentor's time. These are very important people with some really good insights for you. How do you best operate with a mentor if you manage to find one?
Absolutely. That's an important question. It really comes down to you being very clear about what you want to get from that mentor and doing the work. Because it's not meant to be, I just show up to talk to this mentor once a week, once a month, every 6 months and hope to glean something. It really requires you coming forward with work that you want to do. And then the mentor has the ability to point you in the right direction about how to work through that issue or put the right strategy in place for you to reach that goal. And there's tons of tools out there that mentors typically use to help think through how do you break through that roadblock that you're having, or how do you put that plan in place? And so that's the best way to use a mentor. So typically with a mentor, first meeting might be, tell me a little bit about yourself and what you're dealing with, and what are some of the things that you'd like to change about yourself or that you'd like to work on for your business. And then a good mentor will actually provide you some tools that you can go away and begin to utilize. And then from there, it becomes more of a coaching opportunity where you can explore the results of that work that you've done and see what's working and what's not working and do some course correction. And it's great to have that third party who's outside of the situation, seeing it from a different perspective and reflecting that back to you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So where do you find these mentors and how do you approach them? And guys, please ask your questions. Go ahead.
Well, easy. It's partly through this networking, right? If you're out doing that networking, you're rubbing up against others that you really respect and admire. And you're like, wow, I'd really like to learn from that person. You don't have to just go to an executive coaching organization or find an executive coach. You can do it that way, because a lot of women who have become leaders want to give back, especially if we can help grow other women in particular. Not that we don't coach men as well, but there just seems to be an opportunity to really be helping women grow, especially right now. But then the other places you can go is certainly through LinkedIn. And you all should have a great LinkedIn site if you are exploring any of these areas we've talked about, and begin to connect with people that are in the coaching space or that are running companies that are admirable to you. And you'll find that these relationships just begin to emerge.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The other thing that I've found valuable in connecting people is if you've got a talent and somebody else has a need, and I become the person that pulls you together, I become the hub of the wheel, then that's also access to people that you need to mentor you or coach you. You've got access if you're returning a favor, right? And making valuable connections for them. Mm-hmm. So when they're approaching you, do you have recommendations about how to be approached if there's a mentor that you're wanting to go after? Because I think you need to be careful in how you do it.
I think you do need to be careful in how you do it. I think it starts with building a little bit of a personal relationship. Mm-hmm. So right now, I coach 2 people. I'm not on their advisory board. I'm not in their board. I just coach them. And I coached them. One was an employee that worked for me at the early start of his career. He's now in his 40s. And just, a very capable and high energy and successful person, but built a trust relationship with me over time and knows that I will tell him the truth. And so through building that relationship over time, that relationship emerged. So if you're approaching someone where you don't have that kind of relationship, it would be great to build that. So start with asking the person to coffee. Mm-hmm. Women are slow at asking for what they need. Sharing with the person right out of the gate, this is what I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. Give them a chance to respond, whether that's something they're even interested in doing. Someone will usually respond, oh, I see what you're talking about. I know several people who would be great to do that. But if they're interested in doing that, they might say something like, I do that sometimes. It would be good to see if we're a fit for that kind of relationship. Because just because you have that synergy with each other and you think you have a lot in common, that doesn't mean it's the best mentor or coach for you. You need to be looking for someone, once again, shares values, but also can reflect differences and also can see your blind spots and help you navigate those.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So Deborah is asking, what's the best tip you've ever had for self-care as a leader and a woman with a family?
I can't address the woman with the family because unfortunately we weren't blessed in that way. But I will address the self-care. So it's really important. And anyone who knows me will say, I still don't have enough self-care. But because I don't have a family, I actually do have a lot more time for self-care than people realize, because I'm not coming home to prepare dinner for the kids and, getting them to their school activities, frankly.
Mhm.
But I would say this for all women. You need to have time to yourself. You need to have time to reflect, meditate, pray, whatever that is for you, and spend at least 15 minutes a day doing that for yourself, because you need to be able to connect the mind with the body. As I've shared, I had a Y membership from the time I was 4.5 on,
Wow.
and I am big into, exercise and healthy lifestyle, healthy eating. I just went through a 10-day detox at the beginning of this year, not because I wanted to lose weight. I wasn't focused on weight. It was focused on just getting my mind and body centered again, and just a great way to restart the year. So finding times for those things you have interest in. Don't force yourself to do something you're not interested in. Any of these things, I find women feel they have to do it because they should.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is we should do things in a purposeful way. And when we create that space, that white space where we can actually be strategic in our thought, we give ourselves the opportunity to really explore things that are interesting to us, that we want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. Somebody said we got to quit shooting on ourselves. Women do that all the time. Yes. All right. So Deborah's also asking, what is the one mistake you made that taught you the most and ended up being a blessing in disguise?
Mistake I made. Gosh, I've made so many. That's why it's going through my head. Like, what is the biggest mistake I made? Gosh, I'm gobsmacked here at the moment. Let me think.
Okay.
I would say one of the biggest mistakes I made is not taking opportunities when they were provided to me because I had a moment of fear. Let me give you an example. There is a major company called Illumina that is responsible for the majority of sequencing technology that exists in the world today. When they were a very early stage company, I got called by the CEO and asked to take an executive role. And I didn't feel it was the right time to make a move geographically, and I turned it down. I can't begin to tell you how big of an opportunity that was and where the stock has gone. Now, I will tell you though, if I had taken that role, I probably would not be a C-suite executive today and in the state of Oklahoma as Secretary of Science and Innovation at a time when my expertise has helped us through COVID, and I wouldn't be giving back in the way that I am. And so, well, one could say I missed that high and I missed the pot of gold in that way. My pot of gold has come in many other forms, not only in my own company exits, which, it's really exciting, just like having a child. I am assuming to build a company from nothing and to let it go and see it flourish. And so, that would be, I guess, my example.
Yeah. So things happen for a reason.
Yes.
For a reason. Absolutely. All right. So any other questions, guys? I can't type worth a darn. Let's see here. So I just want to give people a second here. Okay. They're being shy today. All right. So one of the things I want to know from you is, of all the things you've learned over your career, all the things you've done over your career, what do you want people to have learned from you today? What's most important?
Yeah. First of all, I think of myself as a strategic disruptor and reformer. So I'm going to say that. And what that means is, throughout my life, at the early stages, not purposefully, I didn't know that's what I was doing. In the later stages, I identified I was doing it. And that is see disruption as an opportunity. Identify the synergies of that disruption and what that creates for you. So for instance, when I was at the University of Michigan and seeing what Dr. Francis Collins was doing and what the human genome was going to be and how that could change my career, that was a disruption that fit a synergy that I needed and had at the time around not wanting to do a PhD and deciding not to go into medicine in a traditional clinical role. And then I would say we talked a lot about this, but leverage thought leaders and advisors to help you reach your goal. So lean into the disruption, see it as an opportunity, don't shy away from it. Identify the synergies that are associated with you, and then surround yourself with great people who can help you achieve your goal. When we talk about technology innovation in particular, we have disruptions happening all around us. And you need to see how that idea you have might fit into that broader picture and what's happening in the world. That's when you get a home run.
Absolutely. All right. So Deborah's also asking, what gave you the courage to start speaking up and become a disruptor?
You know, part of it is personality. You might all be surprised to know I actually am an introvert, but my personality is one where I want to constantly be curious and learning and growing and pushing myself. And so even in those moments of maybe not being the person who's going to raise my hand first or get up and speak, I realized that if I didn't push through that, I wasn't going to actually learn the things I wanted to. And so the curiosity piece is huge, remaining curious. I would also say, you got to work at it. You got to work at being able to talk to people, to network, to get your point across, and to be an influencer. And so there's tons of things that you could do, like a Dale Carnegie course, believe it or not, to help you with public speaking. Those are available all the time. But when you have opportunities, as we heard earlier, and Donna said to us, lead, building some kind of conference, or raise your hand to be on that committee. I also was on Women on Boards 2020, and that's a way to get your message out as well. And that is also a group that really supports younger women who aren't at the board level yet becoming a part of the organization and attending events. So there's tons of opportunities there as well.
And you brought up, I remembered my question that I was trying to ask you earlier, the whole imposter syndrome thing and the fear that you talked about. I mean, from what I understand, women won't apply for jobs unless they are 90% sure they've got all the skills. Men will do it at 60%. Can you talk about this, about the imposter syndrome? Go ahead.
It's absolutely true. I mean, even with all I've accomplished, there are days I wake up and I say, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And why did they choose me? Right? That's normal. That is fear, though. And if you have a great coach and mentor or advisor who you're working with, they can see the moment you start operating within fear and help you put tools in place to move away from that fear so that you can walk boldly. In fact, my word for 2021 is boldly.
Nice.
And so choose a word that represents who you want to be at that point in time and move towards that. And that's where you go when you have those moments of fear. And, fear is usually about us feeling like we're going to lose something or we're at risk of something. Identify that and realize if it's really true or not, because there's an opportunity cost. A friend in the past week said to me, Elizabeth, what's the opportunity cost? If you don't move forward because of fear, what do you actually lose? And because we don't know what's on the other side, we always assume it's bad, and that's just not true. And in fact, the majority of times I've moved boldly through my fear, there's been something great on the other side.
The other thing is, as an executive coach, I'm constantly talking to people about the stories they're telling themselves. So our emotional reaction is to our own story, and we need to change our stories to something more constructive and helpful and hopeful than something difficult.
Absolutely. And, that's also that part of self-care, having those 15 minutes a day or moments throughout the day. One of the things my mentor had suggested to me is that I set an alarm on my phone at a certain point of each day, just for a couple minutes, to reflect gratitude about what I have in my life versus all the things that are going wrong. And those kind of tools are very helpful. And we need to put those into practice. Life is a practice. We're constantly learning and growing, and we shouldn't feel like if I just complete that thing, I will feel complete. That's just not true.
Not true. Right now we're getting some questions. Okay. So what advice would you have for a 17-year-old girl interested in pursuing animal science? And this is from Julie Villa.
Yeah. Well, lots of opportunities to engage in some kind of summer internship, not only with our universities or, our Oklahoma Animal Diagnostics Laboratory in Stillwater, but also think about companies where they might be able to shadow for a week or two. I've done that many times. In fact, some life science companies or healthcare companies put on biotech kind of boot camps where they will actually bring in young people as they're determining what they want to do in university or even while they're in university. I've run one myself before where we brought high school kids into my last company and had them do work on experiments, do some research and development type exercises so that they could understand, was this of interest to them? And there's loads of those opportunities once you just start asking or looking for them.
Fantastic. Okay. Susan Chairs is asking, could you elaborate on how being an introvert, you could keep your energy to do all the networking, board events, etc.? I ask this as a fellow introvert who's had to pace herself as not to become exhausted.
You do have to pace yourself and you have to know when you're saturated. My refueling place, introverts really, it's about, they like to refuel in certain ways more than they can't, get out there and network. It's just, we need more time to recharge, whether that's a glass of wine and a book or classical music or whatever that is for you, working out. But I would say, I am very strict with my calendar. I segment my calendar by all the different commitments I have and so many hours per week per commitment.
Wow.
And it's not to say that I always achieve that, but it helps me stay on track so that I am spending enough time networking, but I'm not spending all my time networking, that I am spending enough time on my own self-care. So there's ways to do that. The other thing I would recommend is, besides my own team that I have that supports me, I also have a virtual assistant that takes care of almost everything that you could imagine that I might need. And I have no problem asking her to do it because she's not an employee of my company. She's my employee. And I think you would be surprised at how, you can get someone like that for a very reasonable price to really help you coordinate your time and your day. And so I would suggest you look into that online. There's a lot of information out there about virtual assistants and how you can find good ones and really leverage them for little more than you're paying for someone to clean your house on a weekly basis.
Great advice. Great advice. I'll put a plug in for LifeSquire while I'm at it here. Valerie Riley has a company that has personal assistants called LifeSquire. Okay, very good.
Hey, I'm taking that note for myself.
There you go. All right, let's see here. So we're coming to a close here. Thank you so much for all of your comments and questions, guys. I really appreciate it. So given everything we've discussed also, could you tell us the top 3 actions you want to have people take coming out of this discussion?
Yeah. Very first thing, know yourself, know who you are, because you got to be right inside, and everyone around you needs to fit within that framework of who you are. Look for that bigger picture, connect the dots, as I say, see what's actually happening outside of your own world and how you connect to it and how you fit into it. And then keep a strategic mindset. We all get caught in the busyness of the day and checking our checklist and feeling accomplished. But the reality is, half of the things we do, or more than half probably, don't even matter. It's, are we doing the right things? And that's that white space that we've talked about. So know yourself, see the bigger picture and how you fit into it, and keep a strategic mindset. I would also add, there's a great book that's been out in the market for a really long time called Mindset by Carol Dweck. I read that book on a regular basis. It's been very helpful to me to help me to grow, receive feedback, and change. So I just leave that for everyone, and hopefully that will be helpful.
Okay, mindset. Excellent. Excellent. All right. Do you have any final words of wisdom you want to share?
Life's a journey. Be good to yourself. And, we all need to work together and serve one another. And that's really what the world is about. And if we focus on service, all the rest comes. It really does. And that's hard to believe sometimes, but that's that fear. And I know that to be true. And I gain so much more from serving than I do anything else.
Yeah, that is a great point. And I think the competitive mindset comes from insecurity in part. When you're giving and you're really giving, you get the focus off yourself and onto others. It really helps, I think, don't you? In terms of women working together. All right. So thank you so much for being here today. You've been amazing. I really appreciate it. So I just want to let you know upcoming guests, guys. So on our show next week, we've got Ellie Schaefer. And Ellie Schaefer is a former special assistant to President Obama. And I want to make sure that everybody knows that Purse Power is neutral politically. She's got an event planning company. She does large scale, really highly visible events, and she'll be here talking to us on the 19th. On the 26th, we have our networking meeting, which again, this is a chance for you guys to get to know each other and meet each other in person. On March 5th, we have Nancy Parsons here. And if you guys aren't familiar with Nancy, she's written a book called Women Are Creating the Glass Ceiling and Have the Power to End It. And she's amazing. She's got data that backs up that women in part are the ones getting in their own way. And it has to do with mindset, to your point, about women getting to the top in corporations. So she's going to be fantastic. I want to put in a plug for Pearls of Wisdom. It's the 30th anniversary of the Women's Business Leadership Conference on March 3rd and 4th from 9 a.m. to noon. And Lou Kerr is the one who's been putting this on for 30 years. She is amazingly connected and she brings in some of the best speakers in the world. And this is going to be a fantastic program. So let us know if you want more information about that and signing up for that. Please do sign up for a directory listing if you have a female CEO or president, or your company's half owned by women, or it has at least 20% women on its board. We want to make it very valuable to be a part of the Purse Power community. We want to send business your way. Please get a directory listing. And as long as you meet those criteria, you can even have a free listing. We're adding more bells and whistles to the other levels of the program. And please support us, guys. We're trying to support you. That's what we're here for. Please go to our website and download the Google Chrome extension. You put it on your Google Chrome browser. And as you shop, it will show you the women-owned, women-led companies in our directory. A Purse Power logo appears next to the company so that you can make the decision to buy from women-owned and women-led companies. We also have a phone app that'll show you when you're physically nearby a woman-owned business. You go into a mall, you walk down the street, we'll show you the women-owned businesses that are physically near you. So we're just trying to provide you with a lot of resources to support each other. Please take advantage of them. Please like and share our social media pages. Please let people know about these broadcasts that we do every Friday at 10 a.m. Central. And I want to give you one more chance to say anything else you'd like. Elizabeth, thank you for being here again. You've been fantastic.
No, thank you. It's been delightful. At the end of the day, we just need to be focused on being true to ourselves and serving others. And so that's my parting words.
Very good. Very good. All right, everybody, thank you again. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Stay warm. And remember, Purse Power, we have it. Let's use it. Thank you again for being here. All right, take care, you guys.